Make sure yours is on. All right, we're going to get started here. We are joined by Kyle Busch, driver of the number 18 Interstate Batteries Toyota, who will be starting second tomorrow night in the Coke Zero Sugar 400 here at Daytona International Speedway. We will open up to questions. Please raise your hand and we'll get a wireless mic to you. We'll start here with Jordan and then go to Greg.
Hi, Kyle. Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. Your brother, Kurt, have you noticed over years a kind of a transformation with him and he's been more vocal, maybe behind the scenes and on things that need to happen with the sport, maybe a leadership role that he's had?
No, not necessarily. I don't know what reference it's in to. So.
He said that he's trying to take a more. I talked to him yesterday. He's trying to take a more active role in expressing things in the direction that NASCAR is going with different things, and just trying to be more proactive and try to be that veteran who's been around for a while.
I mean, he certainly has a voice, that's for sure. He's a champion in the sport, and he's been around for a long time. He's seen a lot of things and been a part of a lot of things as well. So I think he has that opportunity, that clout, and he should be listened to. It's been pretty good the last couple of years for me as well too, to be on that front and being able to go to the NASCAR trailer and talk to those guys and have opinions and have those opinions be listened to. And sometimes you see things come of those and sometimes you don't. It's just a matter of what I go back to the old Bill France Jr. Adage, which was just that they needed to run the sport how they need to run the sport, and sometimes they need to stop listening to people that don't know what they're doing or what they're thinking and just have a vision and go for it. So that's kind of how I've given my opinion, and that's kind of how I still perceive that they should do things sometimes.
Go to Greg.
Greg Ingalato Week and Cupscene.com. This is the last July 4th race. Next year it's going to be in August. Are you a big traditionalist? Is it a big deal that there's not going to be another July 4th race here at Daytona? I mean, we're still going to have another race. Mm-hmm. Is that a big deal to you, or just your thoughts about the July 4th race in general?
Yeah, I am, especially for where it's going. I'll be frank, I'm kind of disappointed. I guess I'm disappointed a lot in life, but overall, just, being in Daytona for July 4th has always been cool. Having the opportunity to go to the beach, having the opportunity to, do that, whether it was on Thursday or Friday today, not having a whole lot going on. And so, we're gonna miss that. And the fireworks show, things like that you're able to go see sometimes. So now that's gonna be in Indy, I guess. And yeah, there's no beach there.
Come over here to the left.
Christian Brody, WFTV Channel 9. Kyle, with qualifying being wiped out, of course, you don't have the whole speed weeks and duels and everything you have in February. Does that make going into this race, how do you approach it as far as knowing who maybe has one of the better cars and you can link up and do all that?
I don't mind not qualifying here. I think it's kind of a waste of time anyways, So, all it does is show who's got a faster car, and then things tend to happen here anyways in the race, and it doesn't mean much. So overall, with being able to start up front, I think that it's certainly better than where we would have started. I think we would have probably been back in the teens somewhere. So having the second starting spot is better for us, and an opportunity to hopefully start up front, stay up front, and if you can, stay out of the mess.
Go to Reed, Bob, and then Jeff.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire. I've got a Bristol question for you, if you don't mind. Do you remember your first impression of the place, the first time you ever saw Bristol, and what was it about that track that allowed you to adapt to it and become so good so quickly there?
Yeah, so I went into Bristol, first time ever going there, just thinking of the times that I was able to race at Winchester. I ran Winchester Speedway a couple times, high-banked, half-mile racetrack. It's asphalt, you run up near the wall. It's different. It was entirely different at Bristol than that, but same sort of mentality, I guess, just throw it in the corners and really attack it and really feel the car squat and everything that it does there with the amount of load that you pick up when you go through the corners. So it was a fun place, and my first time there didn't end up so well. It was in a Busch Series test, actually, back in my Hendrick Motorsports days, and we had a throttle hang, and I drove it in a turn one fence about halfway through the test, so that wasn't too much fun, but we were able to go back for the race, and I think we ran second or third or something like that. So ever since then, it's always kind of been a cool place. I struggled there first few times in the Cup car, just with the more horsepower and trying to throw the thing around as hard as I could. The Xfinity car, it just wasn't quite working. You had to have a bit more finesse, and once I figured that out, it's kind of been pretty good.
Go to Bob, Jeff, and then Holly.
Bob Pockris, Fox Sports. After what Brad did yesterday in practice, I mean, do you think, I mean, are people tired of the way people are blocking? Do you feel that people will be doing less lifting, and did what he do impact how anybody's going to race tomorrow?
I've never seen Brad lift behind me anyways, so I don't anticipate if it's an 18 car he's going to do anything any different. So you have to be careful with who you're racing, who you're doing things with, and what's going on. Tony always kind of said that 2 years ago, you know, and I threw a big block on him in 2008 and about ended up on my lid. So SHIT happens, man.
We go to Jeff, Holly, and then Jerry.
Jeff Gluck from The Athletic, all the way over to your left. After Chicagoland, you know, you would think that you and Truex are two of the championship favorites, but given how you guys have been on mile and a halves compared to some of the other people, are you at all concerned about your intermediate track program?
Yeah, I think we, you know, I look at Kansas. We should have run, we could have won, but I think we should have run second or third. And then we had issues happen. I had flat tires, got laps down, made all those laps back, then got damaged with like 20 to go, ended up 2 laps down. Same exact thing, like the races almost mirrored each other at Chicagoland last week for us, where I got in the wall, got damaged, had a flat, went laps down, was able to make it all back up, got back into the top 7, and then was racing Logano and then cut a left rear, you know what I mean, and could never recover from that. I was stuck in the lucky dog position for the next 80 laps, you know, so just situational. I felt like there at Chicagoland, we could have won, but I think realistically we were probably a third place car. So I don't think we're that far off. It's just situations are just keep kind of biting us and not giving us the opportunity to finish where we feel like we should.
We'll go to Holly, Jerry, and then Lee.
Holly Kane, the NASCAR Wire Service. This may be irrelevant, but I'm just curious what you think. When you're starting a race based on the point standings versus where you've been practicing and what kind of speed you've shown, what kind of a challenge does that present in the field, or does it even at a track like Daytona?
You know, I think you're starting around those who you've kind of raced around all year long, realistically. You know, when you're in the order of how you are in points, you're racing against the guys that you've been up front with year round. And I don't see that as much difference. Yeah, there might be a faster car here or there that can qualify farther up than you or whatnot, but when it all boils down to it at the end of the day, you know, that the competition in which you start the race around is kind of who you've been around all year long. And trust me, by lap 3 or 4, hell, it might even be sooner, you probably won't be in the same spot.
Go to Jerry.
Jerry Jordan, KickingTheTires.net. Looking ahead to Kentucky, I've looked at your stats. You've got 4, races there where you weren't in the top 10, and one of those was the 12th. But overall, you've got wins in all 3 series. You've done really well there. Why is that?
Back that up. Hold on. I did what now?
You've got every finish you've had there, with the exception of 4 of them, have been in the top 10 across all 3 series.
Okay, now you're making more sense.
Yeah, across
because
all
I've
3
only
series.
finished outside the top 10 once in Cup, right?
Right, once.
Yeah,
It's
all
12th.
right, got it.
So what is it about that track that suits you so well?
I don't know, man. People ask me that question about a bunch of different racetracks. You know, it's pretty nice to be able to go to these racetracks and have the opportunity to do well and run well and finish up front and win. You look at Bristol, you look at Richmond, you look at Kentucky, you look at Indy now more recently than years past. Kansas, for that matter, over years past. We've been doing a hell of a lot better, and it's been really good to be able to go to these places and have the consistency that we need to run up front like that. So Kentucky, though, when we first started going there, I remember going there in the ARCA days and the Xfinity days, and back when the asphalt was old and rough and bumpy, and then they grounded a couple times, and it kind of changed a little bit. I kept up with the changes, and then now it's all repaved and it's all new, and I feel like I've kind of lost the dance floor a little bit, you know, so we've got to get back on our horse and ride a little bit better, but I think we've still run in the top 4 there the last couple of years.
Go to Lee.
Lee Spencer, RacingBoys.com. I've got a follow-up from what he had to say in another question, but Jimmy Johnson seemed to indicate he thought guys like you that had been around for a while and appreciate more horsepower in cars could be some of the reason why you're frustrated with the 550 package, because it's really not what you're used to driving. Is there some truth to that?
Yeah, you're not, how do you say this? You're momentum racing. It's almost like electric car racing. You're just trying to keep the gas down as much as you can keep the gas down, rather than having the finesse of what it takes to be able to lift out of the gas and throw the car in a corner and kind of feel it slide a little bit and then feed it throttle and get back to it a little bit and come up off the corner. Huh?
You said electric car racing?
No, I said like go-kart race, like electric car racing. And so, you know, it's underpowered, and you're just momentum racing. You're trying the best you can to just keep the momentum rolling in order to kind of hunt down that guy in front of you, and it just seems like things are happening so much slower now. You're going through the corner faster, but like getting a run on a guy and catching up to a guy is just so slow. Like you only beat him a half a tenth a lap, so it takes forever to get there because there's never a chance for the guy in front of you to slip that much that really hurts him, that then you can get that tenth or that 2/10 a lap on somebody when they overheat their tires or something like that. We're under the limit of the tires at many of these places we go to. And like last week at Chicago, especially when it turned into a night race, the race was around the bottom all night long. You know, the top never really came in as much as we all would have wanted it to, and you couldn't move around as much as you wanted to, as soon as you wanted to. It takes 20, 30 laps for tires to wear out before you start moving around, where before it was like 8 laps. You know, so it's a different form of racing, and yes, it's frustrating.
And you were so solid at Phoenix. Do you expect the car to perform, you know, in the same fashion once we get to New Hampshire, which is another flat 1 mile track?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to pass. It's always hard to pass at New Hampshire, so I don't know how it'll be much better, much worse, but I anticipate it being still difficult to pass. You know, I'm not certain if they're spraying. I would imagine they are for that bottom groove and that top groove, so the middle's left undone. But since doing that, that's actually kind of livened up the racetrack, I feel like, the last couple of years, and it's actually made it a bit more racy, especially on restarts and such, where you're not just so tense and on edge and feeling like you're on ice to not slide into the guy around you.
We'll go back to Jordan.
Holy moly. Man.
Sorry.
Your teammate, Denny Hamlin, had a questionable penalty last week at Chicagoland. He was quite vocal about it. We've seen a few times this year where there seems to be some inconsistencies on uncontrolled tires. Do you think NASCAR needs to have better judgment in calling those, and maybe have a little bit more of a common sense approach?
Shorter answer is yes. More common sense would be nice, but hey, it's balls and strikes, man. Even the best umpires are going to screw it up, so it is what it is. I mean, it's not cut dry, you know what I mean?
All right, we have one final question in the back. Looks like Godwin.
Godwin Kelly, News Journal. Joe Gibbs likes to win, but he seems to almost get emotional when he gets a win at Daytona. Can you explain, you know, why he's so emotionally invested in this place?
I mean, it's the Daytona 500. I think that's probably what you're referring to. I think you're probably also referring to the first race back since the passing of his son, you know, with Denny Hamlin being able to win the Daytona 500 earlier this year. So he's won that race now 3 times, twice with Denny, once with Dale Jarrett. It'd certainly be nice to have my name on that list of being able to win the Daytona 500 for the coach. But, you know, I can't remember our win here in 2008 and what it was like for him and whether it was an emotional one on that day. I wish I could, but my memory doesn't serve me right now. So overall, I think that everybody looks at Daytona as the world center of racing and obviously the most prestigious race here that we have. So hopefully we can win tonight or tomorrow night and figure out if he's emotional again. I'll let you know. All right.
All right, thanks, Kyle, for joining us, and good luck tomorrow night.
Yep.
Thanks, Kyle. Thank you for coming in.
No problem.
And
If I can have your attention here in the Media Center, we are joined by the reigning Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series champion and the driver who will start up front in tomorrow's Zero Sugar 400, and that is Joey Logano, driver of the number 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford for Team Penske. We're going to open the floor up for questions. Raise your hand if you have one. We're going to start with Holly, then go to Greg.
Hi, Joey. Holly Kane, the NASCAR Wire Service. So as it turns out, you're going to be starting on pole. I wondered where you felt like you would have qualified had you done it that way. And secondly, what are your thoughts? Is that where you like? Do you feel confident that's going to be a good position?
I think anytime you can be first is a good position. That's where I want to be all the time. Beginning or the end, I want to be first all the time. Where we would have qualified, I don't really care. We were first. I don't know. I don't care. I know I'm probably the one that's not complaining about it, though. I thought we never made qualifying run to really know where our single car speed was going to be. Not that we're banking on rain or anything like that. It just played out that way. So we'll take it. I've never had a super speedway pole before, and I don't know if this actually counts as one or not, but I'm starting first, and I'm counting it, and that's all that matters.
Go to Greg.
Greg Engel, Auto Week and Cupscene.com. As kind of the reigning champion, so you're kind of one of the leadership kind of guys. What do you think about this being the last July 4th race here at Daytona? Next year it's going to be at the end of August. Is that a big deal as a traditionalist? I don't know if you grew up watching the July 4th race or coming here, or is it that big of a deal that this is the last one?
I think traditions are important, and I think as a sport we stay true to a lot of traditions. But I also think if you don't change tradition, you will always be where you're at, right? You can never move forward. And when I think about where this race is going to be placed next year, the final race before the playoffs, here we go, right? I mean, you think about if you come into this race and you think you're 30 points to the good and you think you're going to be all right to getting into this playoffs, I wouldn't think that's a safe place to be at all. You definitely want to be ahead of that because you never know who's going to win this thing, right? I mean, there's a good chance the fastest cars and the best teams usually win, but there's also a good chance that they all crash and someone that doesn't typically wins this race. We've seen that plenty of times too. So I don't think there's a safe place unless you are for sure lock going into it. So I think that piece of it, even though it's not on 4th of July and we're all so used to it being on this weekend, this race being here, but I think where it's going to be placed is just going to add drama, and I don't see that where that's a bad thing in sports at all. Yep.
We'll go next to Claire, then to Dustin, then to Christian.
Claire Beeline, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. Joey, what did you think about Brad Keselowski's move on the track during practice yesterday? And have you ever been frustrated or talked to him about people blocking the wrong way? He said there's two kinds of blocking, and one requires you to make a decision to lift, and he said, I'm not lifting.
I mean, I guess he sent the message. That's what he said afterwards, I guess, right, on TV. And I'd say message delivered to the field, I guess. He had the opportunity to send a message, and he did. The rest of it, I guess you have to ask him, right? It's not my place to talk about our conversations publicly, but obviously he was frustrated about the way he's been raced. Obviously, that's just what he said to everyone on national television. So I guess he felt like that was his opportunity to send a message.
Let me throw it to you a different way. Have you ever been frustrated by that? Like there's two kinds of blocking, he said, one in which people force you to either drive through them or lift, and that's what frustrated him. Can you talk about that? Have you been frustrated with that?
Well, it's definitely different kinds, and if you're going to, I think there's a lot of blocking that's accepted, especially in today's world of racing, and especially in stock car racing, and even this year, maybe more than ever with the 550 rules where, places like Chicago or Kansas or Charlotte, like it's more something we're all getting used to, and it's kind of part of it. But there is that other level where the guy that's getting blocked has to give unless you both crash. And at that point, if you're willing to make that move, you have to be willing to take the punches with it, right? You got to be willing to take the hit that you're going to be receiving in the back bumper, or you're crossed up, or you got to be willing to say we're going to crash. It's a risky move. Those risks will be taken any time, whether it's early in the race, definitely at the end of the race, where those blocks will happen. And I'm not saying that I won't. I will too. It's part of it. We're all going to do it because it's just the way we race these days. And you just got to be ready for the repercussions of that action one way or the other.
Go next to Dustin, then to Christian, then to Lee, then to Hill.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. Joey, kind of on that same point, can you give me a better sense of how you judge the risk versus reward in when you make a move? Obviously, you've led a lot of these races. You've controlled both lanes in the past. Sometimes that's an easy move. Sometimes that's an aggressive move. Can you give me a sense of how that risk reward plays into it, and how has that changed at all with this type of package this year, and how you try to do things?
Yeah, I mean, you try to weigh it as much as you can in the 0.2 of a second you have, right? But the risk is weighed in your preparation, right? And how confident you feel and where the other car is, how confident you feel in your spotter, and what you feel like you have to be doing at that moment in the draft, right? Is it one of those moments where you can say, okay, it's 50 laps into the race, let's not make you want to make the block, but maybe it's a little too close to cut early in the race. If it's the end of the race and you're willing to go for it, then you're going to do it, right? So, but you have that made up in your mind before the moment happens, I believe, at least, or at least you should, right? And also you should be, there's good blockers and bad blockers on the racetrack too. It's not just something that you just do, right? There's some that are just better at it, where their blocks are more precise or quicker, to where it never gets to the point where the car's going to get to your back bumper, right? And you're never going to get to that point before it happens. Those are the guys that are good at it. And there's some that are a little bit lazier to make the block and they're a little slower to it and they see it later or whatever it is. Those are the ones that get pushed around and get wrecked.
Christian?
Christian Brewer, WFTV, now over to your left. Joey, with so much less track time in July versus when you guys are here for February, how do you approach, we hear so much about you got to team up maybe to work on the inside line when maybe you don't know who has that strong a car in July?
Yes, when I look at speedway racing, I guess I got to go back, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago when, the Gibbs cars worked together for maybe the first time that we've seen, 4 cars be that selfless. And I think it was in the Daytona 500. And I think that was quite the evolution of speedway racing right there. Because we all realized at that point, if we want to knock them out, right, we want to beat them, well, we have to join forces. And we've seen Ford do a good job at that in the past. And then we go to Talladega, and I feel like we've seen the next level that we've seen the Chevys do. Right now, it's forced the garage again to somehow come up with an alliance to beat them. Right, that's what we have to do. So it's just evolving. Super speedway racing is in general, and it always has. Right, and it's something that you can take any kind of rules package and all these different things, and it doesn't really matter. It's about what the mentality is on the racetrack, right? I mean, there's nothing that makes these cars want to single file up against the wall with one rules package more than the other. It's just what the driver's attitude is and what they think is going to happen, right? If you get in your mind that the top's going to work, and you have 6 or 7 cars that think the top's the only way it works. Well, guess what? Once there's 6 or 7 up top, then you have to go up there. Everyone has to. Even if you don't believe in it, you still have to go up there because it's the only way you're going to race. That doesn't matter what the rules package is. So it's the same thing with this. Now it seems like you're going to have to somehow work as a team to be able to win this thing, or even to be in the top 10. I think this is kind of how this race is going to play out.
Go next to Lee, then to Hill, then to Jerry, then to Martin.
Lee Spencer, RacingBoys.com. You finished on the podium last 2 intermediate tracks. We're going to Kentucky next week, where you're still looking for your first win. Since they changed the configuration of that track, has it been more in your wheelhouse, less in your wheelhouse, and what do you expect at that racetrack?
I mean, I guess it's been I mean, I guess I haven't been as successful at that racetrack since they've redone it. I guess my Xfinity stats early in my career were really good there. We've run well there since they reconfigured it. We just haven't won yet. Any reason? I don't know. I mean, it's a completely different racetrack. It doesn't even look the same, right, from what it used to be. And once again, it's going to be quite a different racetrack when you come there with this rules package. That's where it's really going to affect us a lot on how we race each other. 1 and 2 obviously is going to be pretty easy, wide open, but 3 and 4 is not going to be. And when you have cars that we have right now that when you get in dirty air and that flat entry to turn 3, I'd expect the track to widen out a little bit to where I'll be looking for air.
And, back to the question everybody's been asking, does it matter who it is who's putting on the block, whether you lift or punt?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Hill?
Joey Hill, Overton, WNDB Radio. You've, of course, got a little more horsepower with a tapered spacer than you had here back in February. You as the driver, do you have a little more control now? You get more throttle response? Can you control your own destiny a little bit better than you could under the old restrictor plate rules and with the current situation?
I don't think you can control it any more than we used to. I think you're in quite a bit of control of your own destiny here anyway, but maybe the recovery factor is a little better. If something was to happen, you have more horsepower, you can get up to speed quicker. But once you're up to speed, they run pretty much the same, right? You have so much more aero drag than what we used to. That kind of levels you back out to where it is, right? Even though you feel like you got more horsepower, there's times that maybe when someone's pushing you or something like that, it's easier to spin the tires because you have more horsepower, right? If someone's bumping you down the straightaway and stuff, you have more horsepower. You also just have so much more drag that just kind of brings you back to where it's the same.
But when you punch the throttle, do you feel more response? Does it shove you back in the seat a little more than it did here previously?
A little bit, like restarts and things like that.
Yeah.
A little bit there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. Thank you.
Go next to Jerry, then we'll wrap up with Martin.
Jerry Jordan, kickingthetires.net. Here for Saturday night, what is your strategy for going out there? Obviously, you guys want to win, but with you and Brad both having wins, do you try to help Ryan at all, or is it the all Ford mentality, or is it the Team Penske first? How does that work out?
Guess you have to wait and see. That's why you watch the race. I think what you're going to see is and I don't think it's going to be a secret to really anyone, but you're going to see manufacturers working together. Just because what we saw in Talladega, it forces everyone's hands to have to do that, to have a chance. You hope that you're the guy in the lead of it, but you might not be, and you have to be okay with it. I want to push anything with a blue oval on it.
Martin?
I'm so sorry I came in late in case this was already asked, but I know you guys don't care where you drive, when you drive, but this race losing kind of that holiday feel to it, the allure of it, is that a big deal? And secondly, this track, this place being the last stop before the playoffs, do you think that adds something?
Do you want to give him the quotes that I said earlier? I can say the same thing if you want. You had the same question, but I think just in general that I think making this a cutoff race before the playoffs is a good move. I think that keeps it something really exciting. I think it adds a lot of drama to our sport, to where you're never out, of this thing. Sometimes, if you weren't really in contention into that bubble spot by points, by the time you got to the final race at the cutoffs, you kind of thought, I'm kind of out of it. I might not win at that type of racetrack. But here, anybody can win. And so I think by NASCAR moving this race to that moment is going to be something that adds more drama and more possibilities of things that can happen. So cool. I think that's kind of what the schedule does in general. A lot of the moves they did over the offseason that they announced, at least, is going to really just add more stuff for you guys to talk about, right? And more for us to worry about. That's kind of what it does. No, you're fine. It's good.
Well, Joey, thanks for joining us, and good luck as the drama unfolds tomorrow night.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. Thanks for coming in.